Something big is about to happen inside the Miami Dolphins organization, and the strange part is that many fans aren't even talking about it yet. Over the next few days, the franchise could suddenly find itself with millions of dollars in additional flexibility, and that raises a question that might end up dividing the entire fan base. Are the Dolphins preparing to make a move that nobody sees coming? Or is the front office sending a completely different message about the future of this team? Because when you look closely at everything that's happening right now, the pieces don't seem to fit together the way many people expected. On one hand, the Dolphins are about to gain significant financial breathing room. On the other hand, the roster is becoming younger than ever. And that creates a fascinating dilemma that could reveal exactly what this organization truly believes about its chances moving forward. Some fans want immediate help. Some want veteran reinforcements. Others believe the team should trust its young core and stay patient. But what if the Dolphins are already showing us their plan without actually saying it publicly? What I'm about to show you could completely change the way you view the next few weeks of the offseason. But before we dive into all the details, make sure you've already hit the like button if you believe the Miami Dolphins are building something special. Let's see how many optimistic Dolphins fans are watching right now. And I want everyone to leave this comment below. Go Dolphins! The future is bright! I'm genuinely curious to see how much confidence this fan base still has in the direction of the team. Personally, I think this situation is much more important than people realize. Having extra cap space doesn't automatically mean you should spend it. Sometimes the smartest move is finding out exactly what you already have on your roster before making expensive decisions. And when you look at how young this Dolphins team has become, I think the next few weeks could tell us far more about the future than any free agent signing ever could. Now let's get into what is really happening behind the scenes, because once you start looking at the numbers, the situation becomes a lot more interesting than most fans realize. Tomorrow marks an important turning point for the Miami Dolphins. According to the information available, the team is expected to receive roughly $21 million in additional cap space through post-June 1 financial adjustments. Just a few days ago, many fans were talking as if the Dolphins had virtually no financial flexibility. Suddenly, that conversation changes completely. But here's where things get interesting. Just because the Dolphins are about to gain additional cap space doesn't automatically mean they are preparing to go on a spending spree. In fact, the evidence may be pointing in the exact opposite direction. One of the biggest arguments fans immediately bring up whenever cap space is mentioned is the rookie class. Many people assume every dollar must be reserved for draft picks. However, based on the projections discussed, the Dolphins' rookie pool is expected to require approximately $9.8 million. Even after accounting for those future contracts, Miami could still have around $11 to $12 million available. And that's where the debate really begins. Because if the Dolphins still have millions available after signing their draft class, why haven't we heard stronger connections to major free agent targets? The answer may lie in something that doesn't receive enough attention: the age of this roster. Right now, the Dolphins are one of the youngest teams being discussed. The roster reportedly includes 41 players who are 24 years old or younger. Think about that for a moment. 41 players still in the early stages of their careers. That number alone tells a story. This front office appears to be investing heavily in youth and development. Instead of filling every question mark with a veteran, they seem willing to allow younger players to compete for opportunities. And whether fans agree or disagree with that strategy, it reveals a lot about how the organization views its future. In fact, only 4 players on the roster are currently 30 years old or older. Lonnie Johnson Jr., Zach Sealer, Zane Gonzalez, and Bradley Pinion represent the veteran end of the roster. Everyone else falls into a much younger demographic. That's not accidental. That's a roster being built with a long-term vision in mind. Now, does that mean the Dolphins won't sign anyone? Not necessarily. The possibility of adding veteran help still exists, but if it happens, don't expect massive contracts or headline-grabbing moves. The names being discussed fit a very specific profile. Affordable veterans. Short-term deals. Players who can contribute without blocking the development of younger talent. One name that continues to stand out is A.J. Epineza. What's notable here is that there was already prior contact with Miami. He reportedly met with the Dolphins, and there was also discussion of a one-year deal elsewhere before circumstances prevented it from happening. Because of that, some believe Miami could revisit that possibility if the price is right. And honestly, if the Dolphins make a move, this type of signing makes much more sense than chasing expensive veterans. Why? Because it aligns perfectly with what the roster appears to be becoming. Young players remain the priority. Development remains the priority. Building a foundation remains the priority. That's why I think many fans may be misreading this situation. Some see extra cap space and immediately assume major acquisitions are coming. I see a front office that may simply want flexibility. Flexibility to reward its own players. Flexibility to make a move if necessary. Flexibility to react if injuries occur later in the offseason. And that distinction could become extremely important over the next several weeks. Because as mandatory minicamp begins, every practice rep suddenly matters. Every evaluation matters. Every young player has an opportunity to prove they deserve a bigger role. The question is whether those young players will give the Dolphins enough confidence to stay patient, or whether the team will eventually decide that outside help is still necessary. And that brings us to what may be the biggest clue of all. When discussing the possibility of veteran additions, the overall tone surrounding the Dolphins doesn't sound like a team desperately searching for answers. Instead, it sounds like a team that wants confirmation. Confirmation that the young players currently on the roster are ready to take the next step. That's a very different mindset. Organizations that believe they're only one or two players away from success usually attack every available veteran on the market. They spend aggressively. They look for immediate solutions. They chase headlines. But the conversation surrounding the Dolphins right now feels far more calculated. Look at the positions being discussed. Pass rusher depth. Safety depth. Rotational contributors. Not superstar additions. Not franchise-altering contracts. Just strategic reinforcements if the coaching staff determines they are necessary. And honestly, that may tell us everything we need to know about where this organization currently stands. The front office appears to be placing tremendous importance on evaluation over reaction. That's why mandatory minicamp becomes such a critical event. For fans, minicamp is exciting because football activities are finally back. For coaches and executives, however, it's much more than that. It's an opportunity to gather information. Who looks ready? Who has improved? Who deserves a larger role? Who can handle additional responsibilities? And perhaps most importantly, where are the weaknesses that still need to be addressed before the season arrives? Those answers will likely shape every roster decision moving forward. If the young defensive backs perform well, perhaps there's no need to pursue additional veterans. If the pass rush group shows promise, perhaps the team feels comfortable standing pat. If younger players continue proving they belong, Miami may decide that preserving cap flexibility is more valuable than spending it immediately. And that's why I find this entire situation so fascinating. Because the real story isn't necessarily about the money. The real story is what the Dolphins choose to do after they get the money. Anyone can spend cap space. The difficult part is knowing when not to. Sometimes the smartest move is patience. Sometimes the smartest move is trusting the players you've spent years developing. And from everything we've seen so far, there are growing signs that the Dolphins may be leaning toward exactly that approach. Of course, surprises happen every offseason. One injury can change plans. One impressive veteran workout can change plans. One position group underperforming during minicamp can change plans. That's why nobody should completely rule out future additions. But if you're expecting a sudden spending spree, the available information suggests you may end up disappointed. What seems far more likely is a selective approach. One or two affordable veterans. A short-term contract. A player who fits the culture and doesn't interfere with the development of younger talent. In other words, additions that complement the foundation rather than replace it. And if that's truly the strategy, then the Dolphins are making a statement about how they want to build this roster moving forward. Not through panic.